Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for staying here. I'm sure it's a long afternoon with this being the second lecture. So I'm Kasun and Laura. So we are the co-founders of ILOT Colombo. So what we basically do, we make cement tiles here in Sri Lanka. So I'll give you a bit of a background about the cement tiles. So cement tiles essentially 100% cement tiles with different components mixed to it. So for you to get an idea, we have a couple of tiles that we brought in. Maybe after the presentation, you guys can come have a look. So these tiles are 100% cement, and for the same reason, we don't have to burn them. So the carbon footprint of a cement tile is far less. This is a photo from our workshop. So what happens when we decide to do a new collection or new motif? We get a drawing, then we convert it into a mold. Later on, you'll see a video of how we get them made and what goes into making a tile. So each tiles they're all handmade, so one by one, as compared to a more porcelain tile. So each and every tile have their own characteristics because they're all made by a human. So these tiles, they have two components to it. It's the color layer, the wear layer, is mostly the cement, and there's different, we use different minerals to it. Depending on the use, then we alter the minerals. Then to get the color out of the white cement that we use for the surface, we use different pigments. But we are very careful when choosing the pigments. We ensure that they are all inorganic pigments, oxides of different metals. The reason being, so these tiles are meant to, the lifespan of a tile would be not 1 or 2 years. They'll have to last maybe a lifetime of a tile would expect it to be about 30, 40 years at least. So we use a lot of the oxides we get from overseas, but the rest we try to source it locally as much as we can. So the tiles start upside down. You'll see the process, and the lattice mold goes in. These are made entirely of brass. Every time we get a new design, we have to get them made. So we have somebody full-time making brass molds for us. So that way, every time we get a new motif, we can quickly transfer that into a tile. So later on, you'll see we have a short clip that explains the process. So you'll see how the molds are getting made. So that's a cross section of a tile they're getting made. So we get the motifs printed out, then we lay the brass strips, and then we get this mold done. More or less like a kokis achua. So we get this done. So this goes in the mold. What you can see here, so the mold goes in, then you decide where the color goes. So the color, we had a workshop earlier today where the kids get to make a tile. I'm sure we are planning to do it for adults. So if you guys want to walk in and be part of it, you're more than welcome to. So the colors go in these compartments. Then they go in as liquid cement with pigments. Then what we do is we slowly lift the mold up. Then we spray Portland cement with different pigments. So it drives the water out of the tile, and we press it with about 140 ton. So there's a press that works behind this, and it's not in the frame, but you'll see it soon in the video. I'll leave the tiles here if you guys want to come have a look. Then I'll do a bit of background of the history of cement tiles.
You want to show the video?
Yeah, we can probably start with the video.
Should I try on?
Yeah, try it on the internet, otherwise I'll connect mine. So you saw most of the process. So you saw how the tiles are getting made. So because they're all not fired as soon as we make them, we let it air dry for about 20 hours. Then we transfer them to a curing pond where we add some chemicals to enhance the properties of the cement. Then it comes out in about 3 weeks. Then the last machine you show with the bigger conveyor belt, it calibrates the tile. Because they're all handmade, they have different heights to it. So if, say, we have 10 different people making 10 different tiles, they all have different thickness to it because they're all handmade. So, but then we came across a lot of problems because the tile heights were all different. So then we bought this machine where it calibrates and polish the tile, so you don't have to do anything once it's on tile. So I'll do a bit of background on the. Is it coming? Yeah. Yeah, we'll do a bit of background on the history of cement tile. I'll explain a bit. I think in the Sri Lankan context, there were periods that we had a lot of cement tiles used in some of the properties around Colombo. Then right. So this is an early picture from Cuba. I'll explain how it gets to that. So cement tiles were first probably found or discovered in Catalonia, Spain, and also north of France around 1850. So that became a prominent feature of most of the wealthier households during this period of time. And over time, this art slowly migrated around the world, especially to colonies of France and Spain. Then they had people making tiles in Cuba. They had people making tiles in Mexico. Then the French colonies took their art to Morocco. Then to east to Vietnam. So they had cement tiles getting made everywhere around the world. So slowly, then they started developing their own identity. Where in Cuba you see a lot of. Okay. So this is more a background of the cement tile. I think Laura will take you there and explain a bit more about the.
I'll take you through the evolutions of patterns through history and through the different places of production of the tiles. So as Kasun mentioned, so they appeared in 1850s, which is the time where Modernismo in Spain and Art Nouveau rise in France. So both movements were implied rich architecture and decoration. Therefore, the original cement tile patterns were very quite bold. Usually they featured geometrical shapes, vegetal, and on some occasion animal and human figures as well. So tiles were mainly used in the most important parts of the houses, namely the entrance and the living and dining room areas. They were usually laid in a way to imitate a carpet, so with repetitive patterns in the middle and a border or even few borders going around. And then
So then, as the technique moved
to other parts of France, Spain, and then the colonies, the pattern started to evolve as well. So as the technique went south in Spain, for instance, we could see more Islamic art influenced tiles. And this is an example of a tile in Cuba, where the tiles became more elaborated, very ornamental, and with a lot of bright colors. So it's quite interesting to see how the patterns started to evolve with the trends and also with the localization of the factories.
So we started ILO Colombo in 2019. We originally, so we didn't have the technique of making the brass molds straight away. So we imported 5 molds, which were the traditional motifs, quite classic motifs. But the following year, we started to learn about
Making these molds because we wanted to
create different patterns.
like traditional patterns are very beautiful
And they are very, like,
they are very useful for renovation or restoration. But we also wanted to bring something new and to play around with the material and to give like a Sri Lankan touch as well to our designs and to our brand identity. So we started
actually, we started
drawing some patterns in-house, Kasun mostly, and this actually was around 2020, so it was when we were stuck at home, so we had quite a lot of time checking books and looking at pictures. So maybe I'll let you talk about the patterns that you created.
So everything happened during the lockdown for us, so we had all the time and to think about what's the next step for us. So that's when we realized that we had to learn how to make the brass mold. So that eventually enabled us to experiment with shapes, new motifs. So most of these happened during the lockdown, what we call the Peradine tile, the Jaffna tile, the Ampara tile. So they are all happened during the lockdown, and we realized this as soon as we could go out and get it started. So eventually we looked at opportunities to collaborate with other artists. But firstly, first collaborations were with our counterparts, especially architects, and we got started on a collection with Sumedha Kalegama. So Sumedha worked for MICD, and Sumedha came up with. Once he came to us and he bought a fishtail palm flower, kitul flower, and he wanted to create something around the kitul flower because this property in Digana Golf Course, it's surrounded by fishtail palm trees or kitul trees, and there was abundance of flowers on the floor, so he wanted to recreate that within the premises of the house. So then we came up with this motif, which we call the kitul tile. Then we went on tiling the whole house, the 4 floors of it. It was the first time we collaborated and came up with our own motifs to be used in a project, other than the ones we designed earlier on.
And yeah, that's when we started to think, okay, we can also collaborate with, so architects, clients can bring their own patterns to make their project really unique. And we also heard of the example of Channa Daswate, who collaborated with Laki Senanayake, who designed a unique set of 9 tiles for a hotel that Channa Daswate built in India. So we always had this story as well in the back of our mind, and we thought that it would be a great way as well to create collections with artists or designers. So initially we thought of collaborating with Sri Lankan artists and designers who would bring bring the Sri Lankan context into the collection and their style of work as well. So we first, this is another example as well of.
Yeah, this also happened during lockdown. A good friend of ours, 2 architects from Galicia, Spain. they were in the same situation as a lockdown in Spain. So then we started talking, and we started explaining what's happening within us, where we are trying to come up with a collection of our own, and they've designed this for us during the lockdown. So so slowly but surely we moved on to do like more bigger collections with other artists.
One of pattern, we wanted to ask artists and designers to create their own collection of 5 to 10 or more patterns. The first designers we collaborated with are Seshani Kure, who has Muse by Seshani, and I'm going to check her name not to say it wrong, and Dinu Wanigasuria, who has who runs Kalai by Dinu. So we met.
You also see a lot of their work around Colombo, so they're mural artists, and they also do postcards, and you've probably seen the beautiful postcards they've done with Minette,
Sri Lankan architects and artists, Minette, Bawa, Lakis Nanayake as well. So we actually met them on a market that was organized by the City School of Architecture. They were still students at that time, and they were presenting their postcards and murals as well, some pictures of their murals. And we really like the way they managed to encapsulate the work done by Geoffrey Bawa, Minette, Lakis Nanayake on just one postcard. So we started to discuss with them, and we asked them, would you like to try to maybe show your work on a tile and do a collection with us, mainly with these Sri Lankan elements to it. And a few months later, they came up with 7 to 8 drawings. So they were mainly inspired by Sri Lankan flora and also colonial architecture. So they are very kind of, I think they got inspiration as well from their childhood experience and childhood in Sri Lanka, playing around Sri Lankan nature and buildings. So it's there is a bit of nostalgia in their collection as well.
And you see these tiles, the 4 tiles together, it's a representation of the temple tree, the frangipani, the earlier tree. So they also captured that in a smaller format. So we ensured that that their collection work on bigger format and also in a smaller format. So we can use it in a smaller space or in a grander, bigger space. So we actually have their collection with us in the computer. Later on, we'll play it at the end. Then we'll move on to the next collaboration we did.
Next collaboration was with Martina from Original Source and Supply. I don't know if you are familiar with her work. She does a lot of postcards, posters, stationery. Always, so she lives in Sri Lanka, so it's always about Sri Lanka. She has these maps about Sri Lanka, and we met her at different markets and events, and she happens to love tiles, so she came to the factory, check how we make the tiles, and then she was saying, I would love to try to make a tile, and so that's how we asked her, okay, if you want, you can also draw your own collection. And she came out with so this pattern, so you can see palm trees and sun in different settings, and few borders as well to go around the tiles. Her color palette is quite bright. So this is the original color palette with purple, red, light pink, bright yellow. But then she was also open to experiment with other color combination, always staying on the bright side of the colors. So it's really, her inspiration comes from her daily life in Arangama, where she lives since 2018. So it's a very playful collection, vibrant collection, and it really also, like it's really showcase her style.
And it also reflects her personality, very joyous, very happy. Then yeah, I think we move to the next one. This is a collection that we haven't launched yet, but all the settings are ready for the launch.
Yeah. So this is a collection designed by a French designer called Karine Cliquemailly. So in 2022, we opened a shop in France, and during the launch of the store, we met her and her husband. They work together. She is a designer, she's a textile designer and illustrator, and her husband is an architect. So she has her own projects, he has his own projects, and sometimes they collaborate on interiors. She brings illustration, and they always wanted to create their own tile collection. And so they approach us, and we say, yeah, like, of course, let's send us some drawings and we can work around it as well. So it's very interesting in Karine's work is that it's really, it's quite contemporary, but at the same time there is elements from the original cement tiles. So in her collection she has a lot of borders, intricate borders, geometrical patterns. It's really a mix of intricate patterns, figurative patterns, and more abstract designs. And she liked to mix them together. And she divided the collection into 3 elements. So this is the earth collection with flowers, different kind of flowers, snakes, and more geometrical patterns. Then she designed a collection around air with birds. There is also flowers. And then the water collection with sardines, seaweed, the seashells, corals. Her color palette is more toned down compared to Martina before, which also reflects her taste and probably personality. Yeah, it's like her collection. It's like a story. Like it's like a large story that you can choose to pick an element of her story and create your own story from her pattern with the figurative elements, more abstract, all the borders going around. It's a very, very interesting collection as well.
So in terms of collaboration, that's where we're at right now. For us, it's really important the sustainability of the relationship we have with the artist. So we've decided that we give 20% of the sale value to the artist to make it more sustainable and make it more interesting for everybody. So all the artists who collaborate with us for the sales value, we give 20% out to them to make it a more even playground for them to benefit from what we create. So what we are looking at in the coming months is to recreate something that reflects the Sri Lankan identity, the motifs, the environment that we all live in here in the tropics. So this is going to happen soon. So we are actively looking for somebody that can recreate something that Karine did in Sri Lankan, very Sri Lankan context with the Sri Lankan palette, in a very Sri Lankan way of thinking, because when we take our tiles to France, to Europe, there's a big fascination about our motifs, the color palette. Some of the tiles we designed earlier became quite popular, the Peradine tiles, the Jaffna tiles. People found it fascinating that we've gone out of a palette that they are used to in their daily life, and we've brought in something from the East for them. So it was an interesting period for us, where we got a lot of feedback from the people in France that some of them really loved it, and we want to take that from here with somebody who's more competent than us, being stuck at home during COVID, so we are actively looking for artists who can collaborate and take us to the next level we are looking at. If you have any questions, we can sort. Just before that, I'll try to quickly show Shani and
Yeah. Oh, I could have shown on my computer.
You have it in there?
Yeah.
Yeah, go for it. We spoke about how cement tiles evolved in their own colonies and their own territories. These are very interesting books we found from a second-hand bookshop. And you can really see the contrast between, this is from Havana, Cuba. We can really see the contrast between the color palettes, the motifs, the direction they've taken it in their own colonies. We are short of 2 books. There's one on Vietnam that we couldn't source, so you couldn't find. Hopefully one day if you guys see one.
How do I put it on full screen?
There we go. Slow again. It's coming up. Probably. You want to set it? Yeah. How do you say yes? Just sorry. Bit of a mess with the tech. So this is Sushani and Dinu's collection. So they've really brought in some of the elements from here. This is the jasmine, the pitcher flower. Then they've, but interesting with the artists, like they also send us their color palette. So we also bring the personalities through color and the motifs both in that way. So this is the earlier one you quite saw, the Frangipani collection. So this tile, unfortunately, we don't have a photo with us, but we'll have it in our coming up exhibitions. We'll have the full collections at the SLI exhibitions and so on. So they've really taken elements from motifs around, and they also brought in the color palette from there. So it's an interesting mix. Then you have all that, then you have a more Victorian kind of like a geometric design from them. So it was really a mixed bag. We really loved it because it didn't pull us to one direction, and it was very colorful. It was very enjoyable collaboration. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, right. We are open for questions if you guys have anything regarding the tiles. Sorry.
All your tiles seem to be like 20 by 20
Yes.
large.
We do actually. We do 40 by 40. They're 4 tiles size. Because they're all handmade, we can't go bigger because we have to pour the colors within a time frame. Otherwise, the cement starts setting in. So 40 allows us to play with it, but then if you go beyond that, it becomes very complicated for us. Showrooms in Tummula Junction, Timbergas, yeah. So the factory is in Kahaduru. Yeah, also moving soon to a different factory, but we're based there now. Do you guys have any questions regarding any?
When you get a design from an artist,
Yeah.
when you put it into a form that can be put into the tile, you work with the artist with the limitations.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Lines and
So this is a one-off piece that we did for a client in Colombo. She wanted something really fine, the lines, but with cement, what happens is like if you pour cement into between a really thin lines, the surface friction or lift the whole thing up, and you are left with a cavity. So this is the thinnest we can move it. It's about 3-4 millimeters. Beyond that, we can't do. And also, just because we are restricted with time, so we have about 8 minutes to complete the whole tile. Because it's cement, you can't really work with cement beyond that. So we are we can work it to like an extent where we if you can pour all the colors within that time frame, we can make it work. The limitations are the thickness of the lines, so the details get bit. Also because they're on floors, you don't really have to go really fine. But then, yeah, these are our limitations. So we work with the artists. We went back, especially even with a lot of.
With Karin especially.
With Karen, we went back. You see the Karen's, the French artist collection. They really find the details on it. So we had to go back and negotiate to change her motifs. And this is the final form we are working with.
Can you tell how, you're using brass, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So why specific brass? Is it to do with the ability to have this very thin dimension that you were just explaining, or and so if you can explain it, how do you make this?
Yeah,
this
absolutely.
item? How is it made? And then do you make wall tiles also?
Yeah, so they use both on wall and floor. So they,
Both.
yeah. So the reason we use brass is because it's easier to shape and it doesn't rust. On top of that, when you come to contact with cement, it's quite. So it's yeah. So the other reason, it's easier to weld without them getting distorted. So we can apply heat locally and prevent it from getting distorted in a way. So with less heat, we can make it work with other material. So for example, stainless steel is a good alternative, but there's no technology that enables you to work around, and it's quite expensive. So for example, if we move on to do like a stainless steel, it would cost us 4 times more.
Some companies started to 3D print their molds as well, so then it was like a plastic. I don't think it's as durable as brass.
It's not very
So
sustainable.
it's good for one-off projects when, even for this mold, it could have been good. It's just a project we do it and then we have to discard this mold because it's an exclusive one.
So we can't get.
But yeah, durability, I think brass is also better.
Also sustainability, this mold we made about 3,000 tiles and it's still in good shape. And what we do now, when we get a new motif, we melt everything. So we separate segments and we recycle them. We recycle to a different mold. So in that sense, I think we didn't really push the limits to and try to do 3D printing because it's beyond our value. Like we don't believe in making plastic molds.
Do you find those limitations actually like good for distilling like the kind of tiles that you want to make, the kind of designs that are possible? Do you feel like it saves it, it stops it from getting too complex?
And I think for like really detailed tiles are more ceramic tiles, so you don't want to look like a ceramic tiles. And cement tiles were always with this limitation, so I think it kind of keep the identity of the tile as well. We did a very intricate column pattern for a project here in Colombo, very thin, very curvy lines. We couldn't get it perfect actually. Sometimes the color wouldn't reach the bottom, but it was actually beautiful. Like not hand tiles were similar. It looks almost like it was like hand poured and quite nice. Like very different from what we could have done with ceramic tiles, where it would be more.
And also because they're used in bigger spaces, especially on floors, so you don't really need to give them that fine intricacy for exactly. So far we had less complaints, but like there's always somebody looking for something new. So we will eventually have this. Now we are moving. We also venturing out to do handmade ceramic tiles, and also in tiles, they're all handmade, more like a social enterprise. So we are starting next month. We are setting up the factory now for it. So we'll do different tiles sooner, but they will always be handmade. We don't want to have an industrial setup.
You said you may have a workshop not just for children.
I think we have to. I don't know. I think we have to. We had a lot of requests.
Okay.
People saying it's only for kids.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Yeah, I think we'll do.
We'll definitely do today.
Probably we'll ask people to come to our factory because for this workshop we had to simplify the process.
Yeah, and make it less dangerous for kids to work with. You don't want their little fingers to get caught in machines and all that. But yeah, definitely, we will love to have people. It's like, also when we started, there was less exposure to cement tiles. So it was like part of our journey was also like we spend a lot of our energy educating people. Sorry.
Just want to know now, you make the tiles in the raw cement form.
Yeah.
Now, nothing says the night came out and he did tile design.
Yeah.
The lead motive on
Yes.
cement.
Yeah.
And what's your thought on having the natural?
So we will definitely try it. So we actually replicated the same tile Lucky did for Mumbai. So we done a house with MICD again in Uganda. So we replicated it, and it was very refreshing because we seen a lot of his work, and we felt natural to have it. But eventually, we also started making like more organic furniture with cement. So the next step would be for us to drive to that direction, and we really want to get it done. Yeah.
No, and also the texture, like you know how they print leaf on cement, and you had
We started doing that in the beginning.
We did that the first year as well. Then
yeah, we didn't have a lot of clients, so we. But we really loved it. Because we've seen it in Lunuganga and all that. We came back and we recreated it, but it's all it's worked.
and I think on the floor it would probably vanish after when you walk on it, and we were not too sure about the maintenance and the durability of the print, but it's
But also, I think you had to create another Lunuganga to make it work. So, like in a.
What I meant was not just follow what Lucky said like, okay,
Yeah.
you take that learning
Yeah.
in your business is my question.
So a lot of.
Cement could be even a sculpture on a wall, you're creating something interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, most of our inspiration came from local artists when we started. So the unfortunate thing about cement tiles, it's 2D. Because we work with a mold, as you see, it's like it doesn't enable us to go 3D. For that reason, now we are making handmade bathtubs. So this will come out very soon. We are working on it right now at the workshop. So we are showcasing that in an exhibition that's coming up with SLIA. So we started experimenting, and a lot of that inspiration came from his work, and also like all the work with around Bava. So you'll see a lot of that also happening in the site. So a lot of that inspiration came from them. But we also wanted to make it, we don't want to copy it, so we want to like drive it to a direction with that inspiration in mind.
Do we have any more questions? Are you all talked?
What's the best way to submit, not for me, but for people to submit their potential tile proposals?
I think they all happen in cafes over coffee or something, and we chat about the whole thing.
And website.
Yeah,
Yes.
we do actually. Yeah.
website, Instagram.
Or our shop, and we are not a huge company, so it's my personal number that's on the website. So if you ring that number, you'll be here. So yeah, I mean, we'd love to talk with like people who are interested in. Are we wrapping up? Do you have any questions? I would love to hear from Gen Z. Any feedback from Gen Z? Yeah, I mean, if you're too shy to talk now, I mean, send us a message on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll make the opportunity to thank Michelle for having us. Like, thank you very much, Michelle, and the whole Kala family. Like, thank you very much. It was really pleasant. It was a really pleasant.